Okay, everyone, welcome back to another episode, another special episode here at Celtics Talk Weekly. I'm your host once again, David Caires, joined by my co-host, Seamus Zarlingo. And we have another very special guest today, another one from enemy territory. We interviewed Ryan Kaminsky last night, who's part of the Magic community. And we have another member of the Magic community here with us today. He's a senior writer at the Orlando Magic Daily, host of the Locked On Magic podcast, and he's a freelance reporter for the Associated Press. Please welcome Philip Rossman-Reich. Philip, how are you doing today?
I am doing good and enjoying my time. I'm thankful for the hospitality. I don't see us as enemies. Like, we're too early in the series to be like hardened enemies yet. We'll get there. Don't worry. It may not be this year, but we'll get there. But happy to be here, guys.
So
yes, thanks for coming on, Philip.
Yeah, very, very happy to have you on here. I think this is going to be a great conversation over the next hour. Before we get into the nitty gritty with this series, though, I just wanted to ask you, how have you liked Boston so far? You've been up here for a couple days.
Yeah, I really like it. The weather has been like the right amount of cool. Like, I'm a Florida boy, don't always love the cold so much, but I went to school in Chicago, so just a little bit of chill is nice. So I've been very, very happy with the weather. Have gotten a chance to explore the city a little bit. Going to explore the city a little bit more tonight after practice. And obviously, like, I was talking to some of the other reporters. I was like, we love the Kia Center. We love our home building in Orlando, but the TD Garden, you can kind of feel the history and you can kind of see those moments on the court when you're there. So it's been very cool to be able to spend a lot of time in that building and feel a little bit of that history. I'm an NBA nerd. So, like, all the Red Auerbach, all the Bill Russell tributes, like, really hit me hard in the feels.
Were you able to? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Were you able to watch any of the Celtic City documentary with from HBO Max?
I have not. It is very high on my list of things I need to watch. Especially this time of year, I kind of like push all my TV to the side, like. Andor's coming up, like that. There's gonna be like huge binge sessions to get through Andor here, including rewatching season 1 once the season ends. But that's very high on my list. I read John Feinstein's book on Red Auerbach. Like, I'm a big Bill Russell guy. I'm a big Bill Russell defender. So, tremendous respect, obviously, for everything that the Celtics are about.
And also, welcome to the program, Franco, this morning as well. Yes.
Running a little late, sorry.
No, you made it. We're good. So I know we talked about this when we were planning out this show, but just really quickly too, do you still have plans to go to a Red Sox game this week?
The plan is to go tonight. The plan is to be there tonight. So getting my first taste of Fenway, which I'm a sports nerd. I'm very, very excited to get to explore that park.
Love it. So I just want to transition a little bit into a few questions just about you and how you got to this position in media. So, yeah, quite literally, my first question is, how did you get into these positions as a senior writer and a podcast host?
Yeah, so, I went to school for journalism. Like, I'd kind of been wanting to be a journalist and writing stuff on the side throughout high school and college. I joined Orlando Magic Daily way back in 2009, November 2009, like right after the finals run. And, I was in college. I was like doing it part-time on the side. Like, I was just it was like, I was a huge Magic fan and, was writing about this stuff, was getting into the blog spaces, was just kind of really beginning to hit off and was able to join Orlando Magic Daily while they were still part of the True Hoop Network. And eventually I, took over that side. I wasn't covering it professionally. I wasn't like credentialed media at the time. But eventually I took over it in 2011. And the Magic are like very open to non-traditional media, small market. They're looking for coverage. And so I was able to start going to games around then. And I've been going ever since. So, I've been covering the team, pretty religiously since then. I feel like Orlando Magic Daily is one of the better outlets out there covering the Magic. Started Locked On Magic when the Locked On Podcast Network started up in 2016, 17, somewhere in there. 2017, I think 2017 or 2018. And have obviously been continuing to try and grow and expand it from there. And, now I'm traveling to road games, which is still very, very strange to me.
Now, within your covering of the Magic, your first 3 years or so, the Magic were in the playoff mix when you were covering them because you said you've covered them since 2010. Then the next 6 years, they were out of the playoff mix. The 2 seasons after that, they were in the playoffs. Then they went back to the bottom of the East for 3 years before making the playoffs these last 2 seasons. How has it been for you as a reporter to cover an organization that has been on such a roller coaster ride these last 15 years? Has it been difficult at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been difficult, just because you have to manage expectations, what fans are looking for, because at the end of the day, like a lot of what I do is having conversations with fans and listening to my readers, what they want, being kind of a conduit. Like I'm a blog, like I am, you know, unabashedly a fan, but I also bring professional training and professional approach to what I do, and so like I feel like part of my role in the media ecosphere is to interact directly with fans and kind of say, hey, I'm coming from a place where I'm with you guys. I'm a fan. I want to see this team do well, but I'm also a reporter. I'm also able to like take a step back from my fandom and say, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what I see happening. And obviously there's when you're one of the worst teams in the league and perpetually one of the worst teams in the league, there's just a lot of frustration. You have to find new ways to cover and talk about the team. I'm not someone who is so obsessed with the draft. I was very anti-tanking during the days. People would yell at me about that. And I was just like, look, when there's a game, I expect them to play well, and I expect them to win. Like I understand they're not going to win many games, but when there's an opportunity to win, you have to win. That's part of building a winning culture and kind of setting the stage for what we've seen the Magic do over the last 3 years. And that's what they really struggled to do in the interregnum between Dwight Howard and Paolo Banchero. But it's tough. You have to kind of come into a season knowing what to expect, knowing what the situation is. And honestly, I think you just have to kind of live the games. I think, you look at media coverage, even now, like everyone is itching to get to the offseason. And I understand that because, in a series like this, which we'll talk about, like Boston's really, really good. Orlando's chances are very, very slim. They have to do a lot of things really, really well to have a shot. And so like everyone's kind of eyeing the next steps. And I'm very much let's stay present. Let's focus on what's happening in front of us. We'll get to the bigger questions when we get there. Let's collect some data and figure it all out. So you have to find the right balance between looking at the present, looking to the future. And I think that's still a battle with the way the NBA is covered these days.
You mentioned staying in the moment there, and you've covered the Magic obviously now for over a decade. And through that time, the Magic, David alluded to it, some ups and downs during that stretch. But we see where the Magic are now. They're an ascending NBA team. And although they had a rough season this year, falling to the 7th seed, we all know the Magic's true potential and what they can really be with a fully healthy squad and what they could potentially be next year. However, looking at the history of the Orlando Magic over the last decade, what was a low point within the team's progression towards being a good team within that stretch? What was the lowest point of the Magic roster or franchise during your time covering the team?
I would say the lowest point was probably the time period between trading Tobias Harris. This would have been 2016, I believe. Trading Tobias Harris and that summer when they signed Serge Ibaka, Bismack Biyombo, and a bunch of other players with all that cap room, because for the first time in a long time, Orlando looked like they had a future and looked like they had some potential. Like things were starting to come together. They won 35 games, a 10-win improvement. They had a coach who was like creating some discipline in them, and Scott Skiles. And then all of a sudden, like they hit a rough patch, as all young teams do. They were falling down the standings. They were struggling to kind of get themselves together. And so all of a sudden they come up with this plan, it seems, to trade away a bunch of young players to create cap room in a summer when everybody was going to have cap room. And so not only that, then Scott Skiles like very suddenly resigned. Like Rob Hennigan was a GM at the time. He was at the draft combine at the draft lottery and had to fly home because his head coach had suddenly resigned. And then they go out and they sign Bismack Biyombo, who was just not a good fit, alongside Nikola Vucevic. They trade Victor Oladipo and the draft rights to Domantas Sabonis for Serge Ibaka. Even if you believed in Ibaka, and I was at the time someone who said that Victor Oladipo was going to ask for a max contract. He wasn't a max player at that time. He really struggled that season, didn't mesh well with the coach, was coming off the bench. It felt like it was a good time to shop him. For young, if you're going to trade a young player, though, you want to get a valuable player. And instead, they traded a first and a young player for a player on an expiring contract who had never been the lead guy before. And so you just kind of saw this feeling of hope just completely collapse. And on top of that, you had all this cap room, you spent all of it, and you didn't get very much value for it. And so just it put the Magic further and deeper into the hole. And that next season was just a complete disaster. They fired the GM midway at the end of the season. Had to restart and essentially, I credit Jeff Weltman for making the most of what he was given to get to the playoffs in 2019. But essentially started this process where the Magic are right now.
Now, on the flip side of that, obviously you're talking about the Magic now ascending, and we've seen where they've gone. We're talking, they're in a playoff series with the Celtics right now in the first round. But through that time, we talked about the low moments. Was there a peak moment within their progression that told you, all right, this team is going to be serious in the future. This team is going in the right direction. We see franchises out there like Sacramento right now. I don't think any Sacramento fan thinks they're going in the right direction. But was there a moment in time in which you thought the Orlando Magic were actually going in the right direction? And obviously there are a lot of moments, you talked about going to the playoffs, either of these last 2 years, but was there a moment within any of the regular seasons of the past where you felt like the Magic were going in the right direction?
Yeah, like pre-Paolo at least, because Paolo, winning the number one pick changes everything. Right. Pre-Paolo at least, the Magic in 2019, the Magic went 22-9 to close the season, and they were 5 games back of the playoffs, and they made up all that ground and got to the playoffs as the 7th seed to play the Toronto Raptors, and they had a 5-game homestand during that run, and they swept all 5 games, and it was just like, okay, like this is real. This isn't some like flash in the pan thing. This isn't some like, oh, young team figured it out for a week. It was like, no, like this is real. This is a team that's going to make a run, that they're going to get to the playoffs. They're gonna, they're very flawed, and they ended up actually clinching the playoffs in the penultimate game in Boston, a game that was very nip and tuck. It looked like very, very dangerous territory, and they were able to pull that one out. So there's a lot of celebrating here in Boston that day. But the Magic being able to break through and kind of show like, oh, hey, because like I would tell people like the Magic's problem wasn't necessarily talent. They had talented players. It was just they didn't know how to put that talent together and make that talent work together, or they were asking too much of that talent. And that still ended up being the case. Like the Magic needed Aaron Gordon to take a big step forward in 2020, and he very clearly just wasn't a star. Like he's in the perfect role for him in Denver. Orlando couldn't play him like that. He was the 4th overall pick. They needed him to be a 20-point per game scorer, be the guy. And he kind of got that stuck in his head in Orlando, whereas in Denver, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray say, no, you're not doing that. That's not your role here. And Aaron's going to accept that. He wasn't accepting that in Orlando where he was drafted. That to me, like that's something I learned is like a lot of like bad teams. It's not that they don't have talent. It's the talent is being used incorrectly or not maximized. They're being asked to do too much or more than they're capable of doing in the NBA. And that's something that I learned watching a lot of really bad teams. Because if you look at a lot of those players who are on the Magic during the really dark times, Nikola Vucevic, 2-time All-Star, big contributor for the Bulls. Tobias Harris is killing it in the playoffs right now for the Detroit Pistons. He's had a pretty, like, I know people joke and riff on him for not being everything his teams need him to be, but he's had a very successful career and a very productive career at every stop he's been on along the way. Again, there are criticisms people can have about him. I'm not saying he's a perfect player. Victor Oladipo went on. He was an all-star before injuries kind of cut his career short. And Aaron Gordon is, still killing it with the Nuggets, having the best season of his career, playing alongside Nikola Jokic in the right role. So it was never an issue of talent. It was just how do we get that talent to mesh together in the right way? And like we'll talk, I'm sure, about the series coming up here in a minute. That's kind of the Magic's problem now, is figuring out how to maximize the talent that they have to play at a higher level, to get to a higher level. That was a really bright moment to get to the 2019 playoffs and kind of have that moment in the sun after being in the dark for so long. And obviously like that was the pre-Paolo stuff. pretty much immediately we knew Paolo was going to be that dude, was going to be a great player. Like he came out of the gates just scoring and just like making it look really easy for a rookie. But the Magic started 5-20 that season, his rookie season. And then they essentially went 500 the rest of the way. And as you could just kind of see these pockets of like, okay, like Franz we knew was pretty good. We didn't really understand how good he was yet. But Paolo was like, this is the guy that's like galvanizing the whole team and setting them to be what they can be. And so it's just very much kind of clarifying. And so I think that was, that was just like, it was like, okay, like Paolo is going to be a guy that leads this team to relevancy. How far, we don't know. Is he an all NBA player? We didn't know, but we could see a path forward to something bigger.
And you talk about maximizing the stars on a team, and you look at the two young stars the Orlando Magic have in Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero. How do you see the Orlando Magic maximizing those two stars throughout their careers, and what do you think their peak potential could reach?
Yeah, I think first off, I think it should be very clear, and one of the goals that I have for this playoff series, because I'm not delusional. This is probably going to be a fairly quick series. It's, if it gets to 6 games, that's a victory for the Magic in a lot of ways. One of my goals for this series was to see both Paolo and Franz shine at the level to be like, okay, these are 2 all-NBA players or 2 future all-NBA players, perennial all-star contenders, the guys you can truly build a franchise around. And if game 1 was any indication, that's certainly going to be something that the Magic are going to prove throughout this series, is that those 2 guys are going to get the job done. They'll be factors. They'll create for others. They'll create for themselves. They're players that defenses have to account for in significant ways. And even if they're accounting for them, they're still going to get theirs. To me, the Magic are still trying to figure out what their ceiling is. They're still trying to almost give them too much, if that makes sense. Like it still feels like, if I have a criticism for the way the Magic built this season up and followed up their playoff breakthrough last year, it's that they were still acting like a development team. They're still saying, we want to try Jalen Suggs at point guard. We want to try Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner as main ball handlers, and then just kind of see where the limits of that are, and see, we're going to give them the ball as much as we can, and say, go create, go do everything for us, and see like where the ceiling of that is. And they probably bumped up against that ceiling. I think we'll, not to get too deep into offseason stuff, because I still think it's too early, but it's really hard to separate the Magic's issues with what they need to do in the offseason at this point. It's just like hitting you in the face so many times. And it's a lot of issues that we saw in last year's playoffs, to be perfectly honest, which is why Magic fans are especially frustrated right now. But I think the Magic truly believe that Paolo and Franz are both all NBA players. Franz certainly like a 2-way player, able to play defense at a high level too, and players who can get others involved and be main playmakers. Like the Magic are kind of a team that subscribes to, we don't need a traditional point guard, in quotes. We need playmakers, creators. We need players who can make decisions. And this season has been, as much as it can be with the injuries that they face, about letting those guys make decisions and living with their mistakes, to be perfectly honest, because that's just going to help them grow and get better.
And was there a preference when the season was starting to wind down? We were starting to see how the Eastern Conference was going to play out in the play-in tournament. Was there a preference on which team the Orlando Magic were going to end up facing between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics?
I mean, for my part, I wanted to play Boston just because I didn't want to go back to Cleveland again. We did Cleveland last year. Great time in Cleveland. No hate for Cleveland.
Team Noah.
No hate for Cleveland. Loved my time in Cleveland. But I wanted to go to a new city. Like I didn't want to have to do the same rigmarole in Cleveland that we did. Flights are a little bit easier to Boston, if a little bit more expensive. But I don't think the Magic had a preference. I think that they wanted to win the division, first off. Like I think that was a kind of point of pride for them, as silly and small as that might be. It was essentially saying, like, this is ours. No one is taking this from us for the next 5-6 years. Like Atlanta, nice try. Miami, you do you. This is ours. We are the class of this division. And obviously the Southeast isn't much to sneeze at. We all know, I think we all saw the stat that the Magic are the first division champion to not finish above 500 since the merger, if in NBA history at all. Which whatever, I don't care. Like sorry, Zach Lowe, they're going to hang that banner in their practice facility. They won the dang thing. They're getting the trophy. They're getting the trophy for that. I think they understand that it's far more important for them to stack up wins and just create winning habits, especially with how this season had gone. They weren't in the business of throwing games. Until they clinched that Southeast division, they wanted to like kind of get themselves right. And largely toward the end of the season, they did. They went 12-6 in their last 18 games. They largely got themselves right and got themselves playing their best basketball entering the playoffs, which I think was far more important to them than who they would play. For me as an analyst, I wanted to play the Celtics, but not because I thought they were easier to beat or anything like that. It's more of a measuring stick to say the Celtics are champions. They're the defending champions. They're one of the favorites to win the championship this year. They have that experience. I want to see where the Magic stack up against them so that the Magic, as a front office, understand this is how far we have to go and what we need to compete with a team like Boston in the future. Like Cleveland is a championship level team too, but they've never been there. They haven't been deep in the playoffs yet. I think we all hoped that it would be Orlando, Boston in the second round. I'm sure Boston was wishing that it was Orlando in the second round rather than in the first round because of the physicality this series is going to bring. But I think for the Magic, seeing them go directly up against a team of Boston's caliber and prestige and reputation, that's going to be far more informative for what they have to do next than, going up against Cleveland and realizing, oh, we're not as good as we were last year, or Cleveland's so much better than they were last year.
Looking at game one, you said on the Locked On Magic podcast that the Magic gave the game away as much as the Celtics took it. What are your opinions and thoughts on game one, about 48 hours after the Celtics win and the Magic, their unfortunate loss?
Yeah. And look, I'm not taking anything away from Boston. Like Orlando offered them the game and they indeed took it. And so I think that, when you're the first thing to say is when you're playing Boston and Boston is as dialed in and focused as they are for the playoffs and they need to be for the playoffs, they're going to make you pay for every single mistake you make and usually make you pay with the three. And so there is this overarching sense that Orlando has to be perfect. Like Orlando's the one climbing uphill. They have to play exceptionally well to have a shot here against Boston. That is just the fact of the series. That they have to play well. And just frankly, game one, they didn't play well. Like the opportunities that they had, they gave away. They had, I think it was 10 offensive rebounds in the first half. They scored only 7 second chance points. To have more offensive rebounds, one of the few places where the Magic probably have an advantage over Boston in this series, and get outscored in second chance points, that's giving possessions, that's giving things to Boston. And, again, you give something to Boston, they're going to take it. That's how good they are. They can, the Magic have to play an A game, maybe a B+ game if Boston plays really bad. The Magic have to play an A game to have a chance in the series. Boston can probably get away with a C+ B- game. I don't know how you would grade Sunday's game. Sunday was not Boston's best. I think we can all agree on that. I think we can all say that. And yet Orlando turned the ball over a ton. They got frustrated. You could kind of feel that frustration building. They let Boston get out in transition. I ran the numbers on this. Boston had 26 fast break points. They've only scored that many fast break points 2 other times this season. They were both very, very early in the season, like October, November, against Chicago, which plays crazy pace, and Atlanta, which doesn't play defense. Although they had Jalen Johnson at the time, so their defense was maybe a little bit better. The Magic just can't give those opportunities away. Like if Orlando loses to Boston because they're playing this drag out fight and Boston just makes shots and Tatum's making those mid-range shots that he missed in game one, like you're going to have to live with that. Like that's the kind of game Orlando wants to play. Even though the pace was very, very slow, it was a low possession game, it felt like Boston was just running up and down the court in that second half. That's the kind of game Orlando cannot afford to play. And I really feel like they let Boston kind of, again, Boston's defense deserves credit. It's not like Orlando was just like, oh, here, have the ball. It was like, no. Boston forced turnovers, forced mistakes, forced frustration. But to me, a lot of the story of that game was the Magic made Boston's life easier, and they cannot do that.
Now, there were a couple interesting sound bites from the Magic side after game one, where the coach Jamal Mosley said after the game, kind of like what we were just talking about, the Magic need to run after getting stops and get to the rim early. Corey Joseph had that interesting soundbite after practice yesterday, where he said that the Magic are going to cut hard and move the ball around and make quick decisions in the half-court offense. Do you get the sense from everything that you've heard since game one ended from the Magic side that the Magic are going to play fast the whole 48 minutes tomorrow, or just potentially start the game to try and set the tempo?
This has been a thing the Magic have said for much of the last 41 games, of much of the second half of the season. I think conceptually the Magic know what they have to do and know what leads to success. And again, like full season numbers, the Magic scored 108 points per 100 possessions. Over the last 18 games, they're up around 114. Last 15 games are up around 114. So the Magic know that they play better when they play a little bit more focused, a little bit more determined, and a little quicker. When the Magic struggle offensively, it's because their offense just stagnates. They're trying to force the ball to Paolo when it's not there, and it takes them 2, 3, 4 seconds to get him the ball, and now you're out of time to do anything else. To me, a lot of what the Magic need to improve on is just moving the ball quicker, just making quicker decisions, being willing to shoot. Like I've said this all year, the Magic are not a good three-point shooting team. I would rather the Magic go 0 for 50 from three than have a game where they take only 27. They 10 for 27. The Magic will take that shooting percentage all day long. But against this Boston team, you got to make more threes. You cannot lose by 6 on the three-point shooting. And, Boston got their threes up. That was a huge determining factor in the game. Orlando just can't make up that math. I would rather the Magic go 0 for 50, not jacking up threes, obviously, but I'd rather them be confident enough to shoot, even if they miss, than pass up open shots. And there were just a lot of times in game one, I felt like, where the Magic had players who passed up open shots, were just a little afraid, a little like hesitant to shoot, and that hesitation's death against a good defense like Boston, or looking off and not passing to open shooters because there wasn't confidence that they would shoot or take that or make that shot. And that's been a problem all season for Orlando. That's been a huge issue for the Magic throughout the course of the season. And it's obviously like a reason why the Celtics are one of the best offenses in the league, and the Magic are 27th in the league in offensive rating for the season. Orlando just needs to find some energy and confidence. I felt like, especially in the third quarter, it was a lot of Paolo and Franz trying to force things and getting right into the teeth of the Celtics defense, not kicking back out, not trusting their teammates. I think there will be an emphasis to move the ball a little bit more, to look for those shots, to look for teammates, and not just rely so heavily on the Magic Stars. But, they've talked about this for so long and it's been inconsistent. So, who knows? Like, I think the Magic will be better, but Boston will have a lot to say about that.
And you kind of already touched upon it a little bit in your answer there, but just for us here, could you give us a little bit more of a idea of how the Magic looked this season when they pushed the tempo overall? Because, as we saw, Celtics and Magic are 29th and 30th in pace in the league in the regular season, but how did that Magic offense look when they were going fast, if we were to see that tomorrow?
Yeah. So it's not even about possession count. It's about the speed at which you run through things. And you kind of see it in that second quarter. Like, if you go back and watch the second quarter, when Orlando was like rolling and playing really well, it was, ball over the midcourt line at 21, 20 seconds, initiating actions at 19, 18 seconds. Paolo making quick decisions. Like, Jamal Mosley was asked about Luka Doncic a few years ago, and what he said about it really stuck with me, because like Dallas had the slowest pace in the league at the time with Luka, and Jamal's obviously was Luka's coach in Dallas. So whenever a Luka issue came up, they always asked Jamal about it. He can't separate himself. And Jamal said, well, your best player kind of sets the pace. You're gonna give the ball to your best player. He's gonna play at the pace he wants to play at. You kind of get out of the way with that. Paolo likes to slow the game down. Like Paolo, like the comparisons to like a Carmelo Anthony are completely apt. He likes to get the ball, kind of survey, jab step, kind of like read where the defense is going before he attacks. When he does that too slowly, that's when the Magic get in trouble. When he does it quick, and again, go watch his field goal attempts in the second quarter of the game. When he's quick, when he like gets the ball and immediately like turns over his shoulder to empty space or attacks quickly, teams, especially if there's a mismatch the Magic are trying to exploit, no one can stop him because he's 6'10", 250. Like, he's going to put his shoulder into you. He's going to move you. Like, Drew Holiday, excellent defender. Derek White, excellent defender. Paolo Banchero, when he gets his shoulder into you, is going to bump you off his spot and get to a spot that he likes for the most part. It's all about the kind of quick decision making. And I think when the Magic get in trouble offensively, you can kind of see them be slow. Like, I'll literally be sitting in the press box and I'll be like snapping my fingers like, you got to go, you got to go. It's like too slow. It's too slow. Like, you can tell. And what a lot of teams try to do is by switching screen and rolls, by like kind of making the Magic pinpoint matchups. And because Orlando has so few guys who can attack off the dribble, making them pinpoint matchups, it just gums the offense up. And now all of a sudden you have one crack and one drive to get to the basket. And against this Celtics defense, that's a win for Boston.
We often talk about how much versatility and different play styles matter come playoff time. And right now we're talking about the Orlando Magic playing a little bit different of a style. And from that perspective, what are some of the challenges meeting the Magic in trying to play different styles of ball and versatility? And what is this Magic roster missing when it comes to adding that extra versatility?
Yeah, the Magic, so like the Magic's versatility is all on the defensive end. Just having guys who can switch 1 through 5. Like we saw Wendell Carter get out on guards, and the Magic are very, very comfortable with that. Like Jonathan Isaac's a perfect example of a guy who can just do anything on defense. Offensively, I think the Magic have, as much as Magic fans complain about the offensive system, I think the Magic ultimately do have an offensive system that will enable them to be versatile in this way. It's more of a read-based system. It's not like, here's a set, do this, do this, do this, do this. It's here's a pick and roll. You use the screen, this happens. You reject the screen, this happens. It's more about, reading and understanding what the defense is doing. The problem is the Magic don't have versatile offensive players. Everyone can seemingly do just kind of one thing. And Paolo and Franz are essentially the only 2 players that can attack off the dribble and get downhill. And so everything is centered on them. Like, game 1 is a perfect example of what the difference between the Celtics and the Magic are. The Celtics, like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, have a bad game. No big deal. Drew Holiday can attack. Derek White can attack. Peyton Pritchard can attack. Kristaps Porzingis can get himself going when needed. The Celtics can kind of find the hole to attack and find a different player to attack. And obviously, like Tatum and Brown still set up a lot of that. But what the Magic don't have is if Paolo Banchero drives, gets 2 to the ball, he kicks out to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope isn't driving to attack the basket. He's a spot-up three-point shooter. He kicks out to Anthony Black. Anthony Black wants to be a driver, but isn't really good at it yet. Not super great on the ball quite yet. The Magic just don't have a way to make a secondary attack. And like getting a Jalen Suggs back, he won't play in this series. He's out for the year. Jalen Suggs helps a little bit with that. He's become an excellent spot up shooter. He is willing to attack the basket, get downhill, even if he's not super efficient at it. He plays with a ton of energy and pace. We're talking about the speed at which the Magic play. Jalen Suggs was a big part of that heartbeat, and losing him really put the Magic in a deep, deep offensive hole. Mo Wagner is another great example. He's a guy that you can get him the ball in different ways. He can play pick and roll. He can pop out to 3-point line. The Magic are missing 2 of their best offensive players, and that's a big part of the Magic struggles. But the Magic just need more offensive dynamism. They just don't have enough guys that when they get the ball, they're thinking, I'm going to score, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to attack. The only other guy on the roster that I would really say that about is Cole Anthony. And I know Boston fans were really scared of Cole Anthony, but Magic fans saw him last year get played off the court in the playoffs because of his defense. When his 10 minutes of the game on Sunday, Boston targeted him endlessly. And it's not that Cole's an unwilling defender. He wants to defend. It's just really hard because he's that one kind of weak link. He's the one draft pick the Magic made that doesn't have height, size, or wingspan. And it's hard to play him in these minutes if he's not super good offensively. And obviously he kind of comes and goes on that front. So the Magic the big thing the Magic are going to focus on this offseason probably is adding players who are a little bit more dynamic and versatile offensively to add some elements to this offense so that Paolo and Franz don't have to do so much.
And when you're looking at an off season that's coming up this year, like it is for the Orlando Magic, do you think there's anything that could be made adjustment wise within this series to make it a little bit more competitive? And also seeing the game plan that the Orlando Magic are rolling in with, it seemed like they had what they were looking for going on during the first and second quarters of that game. Do you see the Orlando Magic continuing to try to play their style of game with slowing the game down against the Celtics, trying to have the Celtics beat them, or are they going to have to go out of their comfort zone to try to make this more of a series?
Yeah, I think that, it's one game. And so I don't think there's any overreaction. I think
Right.
that the Magic look at what they did in game one, and there's a lot of things they really like. I think I've kind of said this throughout the course of previewing the series that Magic half court defense versus Celtics half court offense, it feels like that's going to be a wash. And like some days Boston might win that matchup. Some games Orlando might win that matchup. It's going to be about 50-50. And, Boston will get their licks in, Orlando will get their licks in. Where the series is going to get determined is how the Magic execute on offense. And obviously Boston has such a huge advantage there. I think that when Orlando looks at their game one, there were some communication issues that they want to clean up defensively. I think they did generally a very good job staying disciplined and staying on the 3-point shooters to limit 3-point attempts and limit the Celtics' ability to kind of kick out for those threes. Like Boston kind of hunts for those threes so much that if you give them a 2, they almost sometimes forget to take the 2. Or you can catch them with a little bit of doubt because their first look is to find that weak side corner or find the 3-point shooters. And so if you don't give that to them initially, there's a little bit like, oh shoot, I can get to the basket. And then all of a sudden, they're crashing down and now they're stopping you. And there are a bunch of the third quarter run felt weird as well. Cause there was just a lot of possessions where the Magic got to stop. They crashed the boards. Celtics got the offensive rebound, or the ball squirted to a Celtics player, and then they kicked it out for an open 3, and the defense just couldn't react in time to get back out there. So I think the Magic look at game one and say, we were in this game. We had them where we wanted them. Our stars did their jobs. We'll get better performances from our secondary players, just as I'm sure Boston's saying we'll get better showings from Tatum and Brown. I think the Magic feel like they don't have to change much. They just have to play better. They have to execute better. And so it'd be one thing if the Magic played well and the Celtics got them on some small thing. To me, I felt like the bigger issues in game one were the mistakes Orlando made. And again, Boston deserves credit for forcing some of those mistakes. But there were just a lot of things that felt uncharacteristic about Orlando that I feel confident they'll be able to fix and be more competitive in game two. I want to be clear. I know I'm on a Celtics show here. The Magic playing well is not a guarantee that the Magic win. It just means they have a chance to win. Will there be a blowout game for the Magic somewhere in there? Maybe you get that big game 3 rush. We all kind of know how these series go. There might be a game where the Magic just make a ton of threes. That happens in the series, and that allows them to set their defense up and all that stuff. But Orlando has to play well to have a chance in these games. And just quite simply, Orlando did not play well enough in game one.
What is your confidence level in the Magic extending this series beyond 4 or 5 games? A lot of people they put their predictions within the range of 5 games, some 4. But what is your confidence level in the Magic extending the series?
My prediction for the series, so I'll explain this when I say it, but my prediction for the series was a hard 5. I'm very confident Orlando is going to get 1 game. Will it be Wednesday? I don't know. Probably not Wednesday. Winning in Boston's really, really hard. I'm a little more confident the Magic will win game 3. That's typically how series go. You come home, get this big rush of energy, you play well, and you survive that. The reason why I say it's a hard 5 is I think Orlando can extend this to 6, but it's going to come down to a close game. There'll be a tight game, and maybe game 1 was that close game and we didn't realize it because, again, I turned to a lot of my colleagues on press row and was at halftime when the Magic were up 1 and they were doing a lot of things really well and Tatum and Brown were struggling. I said, this feels like the one they have to get in Boston. If they're going to extend this series, if they're going to make this a series, this is the one they have to get. And so obviously, to me, game 1 was a big missed opportunity for Orlando. They did a lot of things well. They caught Boston on a bad night. It was the bad Tatum and the bad Brown game. You got to win that game if you're Orlando. You can't afford to give that game away. You certainly can't afford to lose that game by 17. And so that's, again, a big reason why I feel like Orlando let things go and missed an opportunity there. I think that there will be a close game, and I think generally, like, you have to favor Boston in those close games. Like, they've been there, they know what they're doing. It feels like Orlando's always the one climbing uphill. Like, Orlando could, like, game 3, they could come out bonkers, go up by like 15 points, and go through this deep offensive lull like they did against Atlanta in the play-in game and give that lead back. And Boston is very capable of taking that lead back. They will take anything you give them and pummel you for it. So I do think Orlando is going to get at least one game. 2, getting it to 6, I think will be very, very difficult. I think that, again, the Celtics just require you to play perfect. And this is just a deeply, deeply flawed Magic team that doesn't have the horses to keep up. It honestly, like in game 1, it felt like Paolo and Franz needed to both play 48 minutes. Like, they couldn't afford to have either off the court for very long.
One comparison that I gave this series was I compared it to last year's Celtics run when they ended up facing the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers. And those were 2 series that ended rather quicker. The Cavaliers series ended in 5, and then the Pacers series was a clean sweep. And those were both very challenging series for the Celtics, even though they were able to get out of those in such timely fashion. Do you see the comparison between those teams, and where do you think Orlando differentiates against the other talent within the East?
Yeah, I definitely see a comparison to those series that Boston had last year. And I think, like, a lot of fans, they see 2-7, they think, oh, this should be this should be a relative cakewalk, and it may end up being like a quick series, like you mentioned. But I think most people who watch the league understand Orlando is not a typical 7 seed. Like, Orlando is here because of injuries, because of a lot of things that happened to them during the season. And, again, flawed roster. It's a team that has to improve. This could be a second round series very easily next year. And I think that, honestly, that's the expectation, is that the next time these 2 teams see each other, it won't be in the first round. It'll be a second round series. And again, it'll be another lesson for Orlando, who's never hasn't won a playoff series since 2010 at this point. I think that this series is challenging because Orlando's so good and so disciplined on defense. And so, like, most people would, probably see 103 points from the Celtics and think, like, oh boy, like, that's a drag out fight. Even though Boston won by 17, it's just like, if Orlando can hold Boston to 103, they have a chance. And look, Boston's offense was better than that number suggests. It was like a 118 offensive rating. Orlando's defense, like, let go of the rope a ton in that fourth quarter, I feel like. And again, turnovers, big factor as well. Orlando's going to be physical. Like, honestly, like, you asked me, like, who I would have preferred in the play-in. I'm sure the Celtics looked at the play-in and were like, God, I hope Atlanta wins that series. We do not want a week and a half with Orlando. It might be a 5-game series, but we're going to be feeling it in the morning. And they, they know, like, these playoff series turn on random injuries, like Jaylen Brown hurting his knee. I'm sure they would have preferred to play Atlanta, feel like, okay, we can ease off the throttle on Jaylen Brown. Atlanta's not going to challenge us as much. Maybe we can sit him a game, make sure that he's getting some rest, make us, like, I would pick Boston to sweep Atlanta, to be perfectly honest. Let's sweep that series, get another week, 2 weeks off, and then get ready for New York, which is, again, not Cleveland. Orlando doesn't allow you to do that. They're going to hit you. They're not afraid to foul. They certainly believe in the philosophy that the refs can't call everything. This is like it. This series may be quick, but Boston's going to come out of it feeling it a little bit. And I think that's always the concern for a team that's preparing for a long title run.
And what would be after this series? What would be your ideal offseason for the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, I think the Magic have to address the point guard situation. There's just so much evidence. And look, Jalen Suggs, I think, didn't get a full run to see if he could do it. I think there's just too much evidence that Corey Joseph, not a playoff player. Love Corey to death. He's our guy. But putting him in the starting lineup stabilized so many things for this team. And I feel like the Magic have to address their point guard situation. They have to get They have to just get more guys who want to attack. They have to get more guys who, when they get the ball, they think, I am going to score. I'm going to shoot. And I'm going to attack. They need to, I felt this way after the series against the Cavs last year. It just felt like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner were banging their heads against a wall. They need to find ways to make their lives easier. Not take them completely off the ball, but give them guys that they can confidently pass to and can set them up for some easy shots. Like, I think that's such an underrated thing too. Like, the Magic don't get to run Paolo Banchero as a screener and pick and rolls a lot because they don't have anyone else who can create. They can only do it with like a Franz Wagner. Get Paolo a baseline shot, baseline 18-footer, get him a dunker spot, get him set up in the dunker spot a few times. The Magic can't run any of that because they're just so reliant on him on the ball. The Magic need to find more creative ways to get him the ball, and they need players that can allow them to do that. So I think the Magic will probably focus a lot of their offseason on guards and trying to acquire guards that can kind of help them elevate this offense a little bit more.
What are you looking to see out of the Magic today at the practice? Because it's funny, right after we finish the show, that's where you're going to be going. Yeah. What are you looking for today from the team in the practice session?
Yeah, obviously I don't get to watch practice very much. Don't get to watch practice at all. In fact, especially this time of year. I want to continue to see them feeling confident. I think that generally, and again, this is Boston deserved to win. They're really good. I think Orlando knows how good they are. I want to see them continuing to feel like they're still in the series. Yes, they lost by 17, but I generally think the Magic believe most of the mistakes were things they can correct and things they can fix. And that a lot of their game plan and a lot of their strategy is still completely valid and still very, very capable of getting them where they want to be. And obviously, like, the goal is still one game. Orlando was down 2-0 after losing 2 on the road last year. I think they understand they understand in a way few young teams do how long these series are. And so I don't think they're panicking. I don't think they're like stressed. I think they're saying we need to play better. And so I think the key in this series is not letting Boston break your spirit. And that's what Boston is so good at with the avalanche of threes they can put on you. Is the more they shoot, the more they make, the more you get frustrated, the more you struggle. That's where Boston really gets you. And that's, I think, what happened in that third quarter. It was Orlando let mistakes pile up and kind of metastasize into what that final deficit was. Orlando just needs to keep their confidence. If they keep their confidence, it gives them a chance. It's not a guarantee of anything, but it gives them a chance. Boston cannot break them. I think that happened in the third and the fourth quarter on Sunday. Orlando has to make sure that they keep that confidence and that faith in what they're doing.
Do you think they are keeping the faith and staying positive? Is that what you've gathered from this little middle?
Yeah, and certainly after one game, like they're not panicking after one game. They knew this was going to be a major challenge. They know there are things they have to fix. They know how tough they will be to fix them. But again, by all accounts, by all we've talked to, this is a very serious team that understands the task ahead. And now it's just about going out there and executing it, which again is easier said than done. But I think the Magic feel like they have the ability to do so.
And then one final question for you. We like to end these interviews with a special question. So we often see players talk about their welcome to the league moment. Like, the example I love to use is Jason Tatum, always talking about when he first entered the league. His welcome to the NBA moment was checking into his first game at 19 years old and realizing, oh, shoot, I have to cover LeBron James on the other side. Do you have, as someone who's been part of the media for 15 years now, do you have a welcome to the media moment?
Ooh, welcome to the media moment. Besides, like one of the first games I covered was against the Heat at the heyday of the Heat, at the heyday of the LeBron, Wade, Bosh Heat. And I remember not being starstruck by the players at all. I was starstruck by, like, Brian Windhorst was there. Ira Winderman from the South Florida Sun Sentinel was there. Like, J.A. Donde was there. Like, all the ESPN reporters that kind of came through, and like all the big reporters that came through from national that, like, I read and, like, especially as a college student at the time, like, idolized. Like, was like, oh, these are the guys. These are like these are my heroes. That was kind of my welcome to the NBA moment. Welcome to NBA media moment was just like, kind of cutting shoulders with the guys that I read growing up, especially like the Magic beat reporters, like being able to, like, hang out, listen to them tell stories and get their perspective on the league. And just beginning to learn the inside of the league rather than just what you see from the outside as fans. So it's definitely been a journey, and I've learned a lot along the way. I've heard some conversations in locker rooms that should not be printed and are, very, very funny. I've been around a lot of characters, but it's definitely very, very cool.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this conversation today. Philip, thank you again for coming on. Thanks for giving us some insight on the Magic and what's going on with them. We really appreciate your time today. We really appreciate doing these interviews too. We're getting content for you guys on the off days as well. We got more special guests coming on. We're going to have you covered every game throughout this whole playoff run for the Celtics. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button. Always make sure to subscribe. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow, definitely, for Game 2 of the Celtics Magic series. Everyone have a good night, and go Celtics.